Welcome to this week's Bible Topics discussion. We're glad you're with us today. Today we will be discussing judging others. What does the Bible tell us about judging others? The session may be a good study session. We have a lot of verses listed, but to try to keep our time down, we will let our viewers look some of the verses up for yourselves. Hope that is not a problem.
Jesus' command not to judge others could be the most widely quoted of his sayings, even though it's almost invariably quoted in complete disregard of its context. Here is Jesus' statement in Matthew chapter 7, verse 1. Do not judge, or you too will be judged. Many people use this verse in an attempt to silence their critics, interpreting Jesus' meaning as, you don't have the right to tell me I'm wrong. Taken in isolation, Jesus' command, do not judge, does indeed seem to preclude all negative assessments. However, there's much more to the passage than those three words.
The Bible's command that we not judge others does not mean we cannot show discernment. Immediately after Jesus says, do not judge, he says, do not give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to pigs. Matthew chapter 7, verse 6. A little later in the same sermon, he says this in Matthew chapter 7, verses 15 through 16. Watch out for false prophets. By their fruit you will recognize them. How are we to discern who are the dogs and pigs and false prophets unless we have the ability to make a judgment call on doctrines and deeds? Jesus is giving us permission to tell right from wrong.
Also, the Bible's command that we not judge others does not mean all actions are equally moral or that truth is relative. The Bible clearly teaches that truth is objective, eternal, and inseparable from God's character. Anything that contradicts the truth is a lie. But, of course, to call something a lie is to pass judgment. To call adultery or murder a sin is likewise to pass judgment. But it's also to agree with God. When Jesus said not to judge others, he did not mean that no one can identify sin for what it is, based on God's definition of sin.
And the Bible's command that we not judge others does not mean there should be no mechanism for dealing with sin. The Bible has a whole book entitled Judges. The judges in the Old Testament were raised up by God himself, according to Judges chapter 2, verse 18. The modern judicial system, including its judges, is a necessary part of society. In saying, do not judge, Jesus was not saying anything goes. Elsewhere, Jesus gives a direct command to judge in John chapter 7, verse 24, which says, stop judging by mere appearances, but instead judge correctly. Here we have a clue as to the right type of judgment versus the wrong type. Taking this verse and some others, we can put together a description of the sinful type of judgment.
Superficial judgment is wrong. Passing judgment on someone based solely on appearances is sinful, according to John chapter 7, verse 24. It's foolish to jump to conclusions before investigating the facts. Simon the Pharisee passed judgment on a woman based on her appearance and reputation, but he could not see that the woman had been forgiven. Simon thus drew Jesus' rebuke for his unrighteous judgment in Luke chapter 7, verses 36 through 50. Hypocritical judgment is wrong. Jesus' command not to judge others in Matthew chapter 7 verse 1 is preceded by comparisons to hypocrites in Matthew chapter 6 verses 2, 5, and 16, and followed by a warning against hypocrisy in Matthew chapter 7 verses 3 through 5. When we point out the sin of others while we ourselves commit the same sin, we condemn ourselves, per Romans chapter 2 verse 1.
Right. Harsh, unforgiving judgment is wrong. Titus chapter 3 verse 2 tells us to speak evil of no one, to avoid quarreling, to be gentle, and to show perfect courtesy toward all people. Matthew chapter 5 verse 7 says, "Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy." And as Jesus warned in Matthew 7 verse 2, which says, "For with the judgment you pronounce, you will be judged, and with the measure you use it will be measured to you." Self-righteous judgment is wrong. We are called to humility, and God opposes the proud, according to James chapter 4 verse 6. In Jesus' parable of the Pharisee and the tax collector, the Pharisee was confident in his own righteousness, and from that proud position he judged the publican. However, God sees the heart and refuses to forgive the Pharisee's sin, according to Luke chapter 18 verses 9 through 14. Untrue judgment is wrong. The Bible clearly forbids bearing false witness, according to Proverbs chapter 19 verse 5. Titus chapter 3 verse 2 tells us to speak evil of no one, to avoid quarreling, to be gentle, and to show perfect courtesy toward all people.
Christians are often accused of judging or intolerance when they speak out against sin. But opposing sin is not wrong. Holding aloft the standard of righteousness naturally defines unrighteousness and draws the slings and arrows of those who choose sin over godliness. John the Baptist incurred the ire of Herodias when he spoke out against her adultery with Herod, according to Mark chapter 6 verses 18 and 19. She eventually silenced John, but she could not silence the truth.
Well, that's it for this week. Please like, comment, and share. If you have questions or suggestions for future topics, please let us know. Believers are warned against judging others unfairly or unrighteously, but Jesus commends right judgment. We are to be discerning. We are to preach the whole counsel of God, including the Bible's teaching on sin. We are to gently confront erring brothers or sisters in Christ. We are to practice church discipline, and we are to speak the truth in love. See you next week. Be blessed.